Hey everyone, welcome back to Naruto Audio Fanfics 2.0, your ultimate destination for epic Naruto stories. I'm your friend, and today we're back with another brand new fanfic filled with action, mystery, powerful emotions, and unexpected twists. And today's story is, which is what if Naruto sat beside Sasuke that day? How Naruto, Sasuke, Hinata, Sakura and Ino changed each other's destiny, Part 1. A story where destinies change, secrets are revealed, and Naruto's true power leaves everyone speechless. If you enjoy fanfics like this, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another amazing story. Now sit back, relax, and get ready for an unforgettable journey. And now, let's start the fanfic. A blonde-haired, cerulean-eyed boy was simply making his way back to his apartment, strolling through the streets and ignoring the glares of the few villagers that were making their way home as the sun dropped. The boy did not like calling the small, poorly kept room he had a home, but it was one of the few things he could claim as his own. As he continued along the river, the only road he knew that was not often used by most villagers, he noticed another boy sitting by the river on the docks. The blonde stopped and stared at the curled-up figure, taking in the black high-collared short-sleeved shirt and gray shorts, white wrappings covering his shins and going into black shinobi sandals. The most prominent feature of his clothes being the red and white Uchiha clan symbol emblazoned on the back of his shirt, his coal-black hair fashioned in a way that reminded the blonde of that added credence to what clan he was from. After eyeing his own scruffy white t-shirt and black capri shorts, the only symbol he wore being a red flame swirl on the center of his shirt, he was about to walk on, never having had a good opinion of the arrogant Uchiha even after the massacre, but something about the other boy stopped him. It was a sense of familiarity he got when looking at the other boy that stopped him, which at first confused the blonde for what could he have in common with the heir to a prominent clan, and one revered and respected by the village no less. After standing and thinking about it for a moment, observing the Uchiha sitting by the docks, he realized with a start just what felt so familiar about him. The dark-haired boy seemed isolated and loneliness nearly rolled off of him in waves. Perhaps this boy did not feel nearly as much suffering from elongated periods of both isolation and loneliness as the blonde had, but equally he could not help but sympathize. The blonde had dealt with an environment that caused both daily and understood the pain better than many in his village, and even though those same villagers were the cause for his suffering, he did not wish those feelings on anyone because he knew just how much it hurt. So, even if it meant hanging out with the arrogant, show-off of an Uchiha, the blonde made his way down the grassy hill and onto the wooden planks, walking all the way to the end and sitting down next to him, ignoring when the dark-haired boy stiffened. The blonde simply began swinging his legs over the end of the dock, not saying a word. The dark-haired boy glanced up from above his knees where his face was previously buried to find that the blonde that had joined him was just staring at the sunset in the distance. The Uchiha raised his head further, looking to the sunset as well, a strange and undeniable warmth beginning to pool in his chest at the silent understanding and companionship that the blonde seemed to be emanating. Neither said a word as both watched the sun disappear behind the horizon. 3-year time skip. Konoha Academy. Iruka scanned his class as he walked in, taking a cursory attendance as he walked to the podium in the front of the room. He was shocked to see his favorite, hyperactive student, Naruto was on time, though he seemed to be having a harder time with Sasuke's 2 more devoted fangirls because of it. What was even more surprising was that Naruto was uncharacteristically ignoring them rather than argue with them like he usually did. Sasuke was also oddly quiet, seeing as he usually added his own cold, biting remarks in defense of his best friend, but today he seemed almost amused at the fact that Naruto was being verbally bullied by the 2 loud girls. Iruka shrugged and put aside the strange behavior of the even stranger friends, turning to the board to prepare for class when he heard a poof and 2 small squeals of surprise that were cut off midway. Iruka whirled around, only to see the same scene as before. However, Sasuke and Naruto were now both grinning at each other, Ino and Sakura wide-eyed and holding their hands firmly over their mouths. Iruka sighed as the remains of the smoke around them dispersed, already having deduced the reason for their odd behavior. So Sasuke hinged into Naruto and used a clone jutsu for himself to make me believe he was here on time and released it while the real Naruto came late and snuck in through the window as soon as my back was turned. Uruka sighed again as he tiredly asked the question he knew would not be answered truthfully. Would any of you care to explain what just happened? Sasuke's expression had returned to the impassive mask that he always wore around anyone but Naruto. The girls only shook their heads vigorously before scurrying to their seats, and Naruto gave that foxy grin that he was well known for, his eyes squinting closed as he placed his hands behind his head. Nothin' Uruka-sensei. Just pulling a small prank on Ino and Sakura so they'd leave us alone. The excuse was simple, but surprisingly plausible, leaving Uruka slightly worried. Oh great. They're getting better at infiltration and deception, not to mention planning and tactics. I didn't expect to be teaching my students in such an unintentionally roundabout way. Why can't they just pay attention during class? Uruka mentally cried, but despite his miserable thoughts, he couldn't help the proud smile that made its way to his lips as he shook his head in exasperation. Those two never ceased to surprise him. After the tragic event of the Uchiha clan massacre, Naruto and Sasuke seemed to have formed a deep and unbreakable bond of friendship. It helped both boys to not be isolated during their childhood and greatly supported Sasuke since his brother betrayed Konoha. Naruto had stepped in to replace him as a kind of irresponsible same-age brother or perhaps even as an older brother figure despite Sasuke being older by a few months. Uruka wasn't the only one surprised by the pair's forged friendship. The entire village was taken aback when the only loyal heir to the prestigious Uchiha clan started to associated with the village pariah, and since Sasuke was treated like a prince, the villagers did not know how to act around the two when they were seen together. The villagers were afraid to glare or look coldly at Naruto like they usually did for fear of Sasuke thinking it was him they were glaring at, fearful of offending him and losing any favor they thought they had. However, they were also afraid of showing respect to the heir, even if they only wished to greet him with a simple nod or bow, since they were afraid others might think that they were acknowledging or showing respect to the demon brat. The result ended up being that the two were avoided altogether whenever they were seen walking around the village together, which suited the two just fine since neither of them liked to interact with the villagers, and the two went out of their way anyways to avoid the villagers by taking less crowded roads or simply using back roads and alleys that Naruto knew like the back of his hand. Both Naruto and Sasuke enjoyed being able to get to know each other better without being ogled or criticized by their peers and the villagers, both appreciating the privacy as they began to go more in depth into their lives. The two had become close friends rather quickly, their bond only growing stronger when Naruto had discovered the reason he was hated through a slip of the tongue of a drunken villager that had attempted to take Naruto's life on his birthday, and later telling Sasuke after having dragged Sasuke to his favorite spot in the entire village as proof of his trust in the Uchiha. Naruto wanted to show the Uchiha that he wasn't the only one who was isolated for who he was, that Naruto could understand much better than anyone else, that he shouldn't feel so alone. He had also told Sasuke of who he suspected his father to be, again bringing with it an understanding of living up to a name, living in someone's shadow. Having seen firsthand, and being told of Naruto's life so far as well as the Kyuubi and the fourth Hokage, that Naruto had dealt with just as much, if not worse, suffering than himself, helped put his own troubles into perspective and even helped him overcome the loss of his family, if only just a little, just as Naruto had overcome the need to feel hatred and get revenge on those who mistreat him. Oh, Sasuke still had the desire to avenge his clan by killing his brother, but being with Naruto and hearing his dream of becoming Hokage and protecting the very people that made his life a living hell made Sasuke more aware of his desire to become strong simply for the sake of killing one man rather than for the sake of protecting what is precious to him. It was then that Sasuke had decided that he would become strong for that purpose, rather than revenge. He would become one of the strongest shinobi in the elemental nations to re-establish and uphold his clan's honor, to protect his village, and to help his friend achieve his own dreams. Sasuke knew he was not the leader type, though he could lead if the occasion called for it. He very much preferred to be alone, but Naruto was different. It wasn't difficult for the Uchiha to see the hidden potential that Naruto had in both strength and charisma, so it was an easy decision to decide to start training with Naruto, helping the whiskered Jinchuriki out a lot when he had admitted to struggling with academy because of past teachers having sabotaged his friend from reading and writing to taijutsu forms and kunai, shuriken throwing. It didn't help that Naruto had naturally horrendous chakra control either. After intensive reconditioning and training on Naruto's part and some serious studying on both their parts, they had finally gotten Naruto up to speed and even managed to get themselves both up to at least mid-genin level at the tender age of 10. The training had very well paid off as they had discovered the few upsides to Naruto's teachings as well as why he had difficulty with his chakra. After having been forced to write and throw and lead with his non-dominant hand, Naruto had become ambidextrous, using his right hand more often even though his left was stronger. Naruto had also learned to do any jutsu with only one-handed signs along with the fact that he didn't have to say the names since his teachers had told him not to, knowing it would be more difficult for him to pull off the jutsu even with the right-hand signs, but once Naruto had figured the right-hand signs he could pull of the academy jutsu. All except one. The clone jutsu. This was where Sasuke's discovery had come in. Through some research in the academy libraries and some sneaking in the Hokage Tower *****, Sasuke had discovered that the reason for Naruto's poor control was because he simply had too much of it. Naruto, though happy with finding the cause of his problem, was not so excited towards the solution as it meant spending hours upon hours of meditation and different chakra control exercises. Thankfully their little trips to the Hokage Tower bore more fruit than simply just figuring out the problem and deducing the solution. On their trips they had found various chakra control exercises, scrolls on elemental affinities with chakra paper provided, some low-level jutsus, and even a reference to a forbidden clone technique that was hinted to help speed up training. Needless to say both youths were interested and wasted no time finding the forbidden scroll to look up that single technique. Though both were eager for this technique and knew that even looking into the forbidden scroll was something they shouldn't do especially for academy students, they had already broken into the Hokage Tower many times and both had agreed to look and read that one technique and maybe not even use it if the repercussions were too severe. Though at first they had felt guilty in looking in the scroll, like they had felt slightly guilty for breaking into the tower, they felt slightly justified in doing so because both Naruto and Sasuke knew that Naruto wouldn't get the education he needed if they simply waited around for an unbiased teacher, so both decided to simply go all out, so to speak, by learning all they could before they graduated and became genin. Sasuke did so because he wanted to protect Naruto and grow stronger with him, helping each other out wherever they could, augmenting their strengths and helping the other overcome their weaknesses, covering for each other's weaknesses if they couldn't. Naruto did so for similar reasons, but also to be strong enough to defend himself from ninja both in and out of the village, since other villagers would not be so blind to how much he resembled his late father, and him becoming an official ninja of Konoha would bring him closer to the other ninja residing here that he had not met or seen much of before, and Naruto thought that was not entirely a good thing since he did not know if they would hate him for what he holds, and having any ninja hate you is hazardous to your health. Both had, then, obviously been absolutely giddy when they had found and read about the Shadow Clone Jutsu and its capabilities, how it could send the user its memories when dispelled along with any remaining chakra it had. The only downside was the chakra consumption, but Naruto had enough to be his own army and Sasuke had always had more chakra than his peers, so being his own team was more than enough for him, especially since he didn't need as much help as Naruto needed to with keeping up his chakra control. Needless to say, both boys were looking at each other, their grins stretching from ear to ear as they put away the original scrolls and took with them their copied findings back to the little secret base they had made atop the Hokage monument. Both boys were running at full speed, their eyes wide and alight with excitement, the two practically drooling at how much they could accomplish with that one jutsu, and both thought one thing as their eyes steeled with determination. Tomorrow is when the real training starts. Naruto could honestly say that Kage Bunshin was a godsend, and in fact, he's probably already said as much to Sasuke. Thanks to that one technique, Naruto's chakra control improved by leaps and bounds, to the point where he decided to try his hand at medical ninjutsu. He soon discovered that with the amount of chakra he possessed, he could perform feats thought near impossible for most Iryo nin thanks to his monstrous chakra reserves, and could possibly regrow limbs if he studied and practiced enough, as long as he kept perfect chakra control, of course. Sasuke himself had found Kage Bunshin useful in that he had perfected, if not mastered, most of his fire jutsu, the ones he used the most he could do easily without having to say the name or even do the hand signs, though he still made a point to expand his ninjutsu library with the scrolls they'd gotten from the tower, like Naruto. The duo had also made a point to practice with their affinities, both happy with what they'd discovered. Sasuke had not been surprised with fire, but had been pleased that he had a secondary lightning affinity that was almost as strong as his first. Naruto himself was not surprised with his strong wind affinity, seeing as how he remembered the Yondaime having one, but the secondary and tertiary affinities of water and earth shocked him a little, not because of the elements themselves, but the fact that he had two secondary affinities that were equally strong, though it was obvious that wind would always be his strongest. Their progress with their affinities soon came to a halt, however, when they discovered that their training with their elements couldn't go much further than learning the first stages along with some starting elemental ninjutsu. They grudgingly accepted that they would have to wait until they became genin to learn more powerful jutsus from their Jonin sensei, since they didn't wish to infiltrate the Jonin sections of the Hokage Tower, even though they've technically already looked into the Forbidden Scroll, which is much worse, but it wasn't their fault that the thing was so poorly guarded. They were also somewhat unhappy with their progress in Tai and Genjutsu as well. Sasuke was blocked from more powerful Genjutsu thanks to Uchiha scrolls being Sharingan only activated, and it also stopped his progress with the Uchiha Taijutsu style since he had gotten it as good as he could get it without having an active Sharingan. Naruto himself could go no further with the simple academy-style taijutsu, and genjutsu was something he was all but immune to thanks to his chakra reserves, being that only the strongest could capture him, and thanks to his control he could perform powerful genjutsu, which he was extremely proud of, but upset with since he had no access to them, again having to contend himself with waiting until they get a Jonin sensei. Not satisfied with having reached a standstill in most of their training, the two quickly decided to find something to specialize in instead of sitting around waiting to build up their ninjutsu libraries. Sasuke had started practicing kenjutsu after having remembered his mother's skill with it and some simple fuinjutsu, recognizing the usefulness of being able to create simple traps, barriers, and explosion seals on the fly, and it would have the bonus of improving his writing and saving him money in the long run, but he decided he wouldn't try to go beyond simple seals since he wanted to invest more time in kenjutsu. Naruto, however, had gotten very interested in fuinjutsu, his father's famous Hiraishin seal and his own Shisho Fuin seal having nothing to do with his interest, of course. Of course, his interest in fuinjutsu was also not enough to occupy his time, seeing his clones could learn fuinjutsu without his needing to do anything but wait or join, so he began to avidly touch on kenjutsu as well. Wanting to at least be able to wield a sword if the occasion called for it, but his attention was soon diverted to something else when he found some rather old books in a forgotten part of the civilian section of the public library. It was there that Naruto had found books on a certain taijutsu called Shaolin Kung Fu and the history and culture of the ones who used it. Naruto soon became fascinated with both the style and how the culture well revolved around the mastery of the former. It took no time for Naruto to enthusiastically begin training in it. As he read on about their history, he discovered that the original users, monks, had discovered their chakra, or kai as they called it, and were able to call upon it to harden certain parts of their body to withstand wooden or metal pulls and even be able to stop spears and lances from running them through. They also used their kai to augment the strength in their arms and legs so that they could break stone and metal and pierce glass with simple needles, and it made Naruto think to a certain slug Sanin, wondering if the woman had only rediscovered a method that had already been discovered and by monks with no more chakra than a civilian held. Needless to say, Naruto had found something besides fuinjutsu to train with. Unfortunately for the two, they knew that they could not spend every waking minute training, so every week they would take a break from all their training for a handful of hours every day or every other day depending on the intensity of the day's training and simply relax. This did not include meditating at first, since that was still considered training since it took effort. After they had finally gotten accustomed to actually relaxing and being calm, something both had trouble with, seeing as both were doers and tended to always be doing something, they had begun to develop hobbies and interests outside of training. Sasuke had, in his serious desire to continue training without training, taken up calligraphy as a hobby to do in order to wind down and relax, actually having found it peaceful and relaxing when he got into it for the purpose of winding down rather than simply for the sake of improving his fuinjutsu. He had also taken to learning how to forge his own weapons, mostly only kunai and shuriken, since it would again save him money in the long run, and as an added bonus, he wouldn't have to go to the village as often. It was then Naruto discovered that Sasuke was a rather frugal person despite his upbringing as the youngest Uchiha heir. Naruto himself had found himself studying botany in his free time, growing his own fruits, vegetables, flowers, and herbs for foods, medicines, and poisons, as well as simply having a fascination and strangely deep connection with nature itself. It was in his love for nature that he found meditation to be more than simple training. After having countless numbers of clones doing tedious and repetitive tasks and receiving those memories multiplied by hundreds, Naruto had developed an incredible patience that would astound anyone that knew Naruto to any degree, since everyone knew, Sasuke included, that Naruto had a hard time staying still for more than 3 minutes. Naruto had made the wonderful discovery that simply sitting in a natural setting, isolated from the village and its inhabitants, gave Naruto a sense of peace that he had very seldom felt, a connection to the life around him that left him awed every time. Sasuke himself was more than a little surprised that meditation had become a regular habit for Naruto, but was glad that it brought Naruto that peace of mind, relaxed him in a way that Sasuke knew he couldn't be around most anyone but his most precious people, and there were very few on that list for Naruto and even fewer on Sasuke's since, admittedly, Naruto was the only one currently on the list. Of course, more often than not, the duo found themselves spending most of their free time together, which wasn't much of a surprise, and it wasn't difficult to think of something useful to do when they weren't training. Since both were in such politically high and/or precarious situations, the two made the easy decision to study and learn all the laws of the village and strive to learn as much as they could about politics, going through the trouble of learning as much as they could about different clan laws as well in case of any situation. Psychology as well was thrown in, knowing that a deeper understanding of the psyche would help them in the long run. The two had also taken to learning business management, seeing as both were clan heirs, as well as delving further into Konoha's history, looking to the tower, when they completed the history books provided at the academy. It was through this that they learned about Uzushiogakure and the Uzumaki clan, which they immediately connected with Naruto, obviously. Of course, it was almost as easy finding out who Naruto's mother was after that, seeing as there was only one other Uzumaki residing in Konoha before and after Uzu's destruction. Naruto was ecstatic to find out his mother was a woman called Kushina Uzumaki, better known as the Red Death. Even though he was sad to find that she had died the same day his father had, he was happy to know who she was. Sasuke could only shake his head in exasperation as he realized that his best friend was the child of the Yellow Flash and the Red Death, heir and basically prince of the fallen Uzushiogakure, and heir to the Senju clan as well, since they discovered that his mom was the granddaughter of Mito Uzumaki, wife of Hashirama Senju. It should have been Lady Tsunade who was heiress to her clan, but since she has not been an active ninja in Konoha, or even been in Konoha for more than 10 years, the responsibilities of heir fell onto Naruto. Both Sasuke and Naruto were only glad and relieved that the Namikaze weren't technically a clan, so he wasn't the heir to 3 clans. Their discovery, in the end, had only made the two friends closer, making them family in all but blood, if not closer, seeing as Sasuke trusted and confided in Naruto more than he ever did his own family, and Naruto's bond with Sasuke was the first true one he ever made and therefore incredibly strong. Despite all the secrets his surrogate grandfather, the Sandaime Hokage, was keeping from him, Naruto couldn't bring it in himself to hate the old man, seeing as he probably hid everything from him for his own protection. Naruto also placed a hefty amount of blame for his misery and Uzushiogakures obscured past on the civilian council, since they were the ones that headed the academy after having managed to filch control of it from the ninja council during the Sandaime's transfer back to Hokage, and probably took many other responsibilities not suited for them during the power change. Though Naruto still found some fault in some of the things his Gigi did, he knew his grandfather figure was old and tired and at a disadvantage with the now overpowered council, but it would be easy enough to fix if Hiruzen just grew a backbone and reminded them that this village was a dictatorship, not a democracy. It may take time, but it could be done. Of course, Naruto wasn't very focused on his grandfather's political problems right now, instead focusing on getting stronger with Sasuke so he'd be able to defend himself against anything that may come their way. Haha, oh, Naruto, you'll find out soon enough. Get your mind out of the gutter, you pervs. They're only 8 years old, and I'll tell you right now that this will not be a Sasunaru pairing. These two are just going to be BFFs, so don't hope for more, please. Okay, yeah, I know, 8 to 11-year-olds breaking into the Hokage Tower is a little far-fetched, but in my story Naruto is already established as a prankster, and don't you think Naruto should already be intimately familiar with the Hokage Tower, not only because of his visits with his surrogate grandfather but also because of the pranks he's probably pulled on not only the Hokage but the Anbu and any other poor Chunin or Jonin that's working there as well. Also, it's not like for all their little break-ins, they've been looking in the heavily guarded, super secret areas, only certain archives or libraries that don't usually grant access to Genin or Academy students, so try not to get your panties too twisted because of this. Alright, so I just want to explain that he's not actually connected to nature, and by that I mean he's not in Sage Mode, since I would assume that that's what Sage Mode is supposed to entail. Naruto's just more in tune with nature and finds it more peaceful and relaxing, since he can't relax around people or the village in general sans a few places because he's constantly on guard, but when he's alone and only surrounded by trees and nature basically, he can really relax, though his super attentiveness to nature will come into play later. Let's just say there's a reason for the hyper-focus on plants rather than animals, a rather large hint there. I feel the need to explain why Naruto and Sasuke didn't immediately figure out who his mother was after finding out about his dad, even with his last name. If you think about it, it should be fairly easy to figure out, if not then here. Uzumaki and the history of the Uzumaki in general is basically hidden from the majority of the populace, and only key figures really know about them, so it's understandable that they wouldn't figure it out until they actually looked up Konoha's true history in the Hokage Tower, and it wasn't even their real intention, they just wanted blanks filled in that were left in the standard Academy history books. There's also the fact that Kushina Uzumaki herself wouldn't exactly be super talked about in Konoha, since most didn't know that she was a Jinchuriki, and again most people didn't befriend her since she was an outsider refugee. Anyone who knew her may not have even known about her Jinchuriki status, and those who were close to her are either dead or ignoring, don't know about, or are keeping the secret from Naruto, i.e. Makoto Uchiha, Kakashi, and Sandaime. So add not knowing about Uzumaki on top of not knowing any other Uzumaki in the village, as well as the fact that many people including close friends may not have known Kushina and Minato were married. Naruto chalked it up to a random name they gave him at the orphanage. Also, I'm really sorry that it's mostly just descriptions and details and stuff. I swear that there's going to be way more dialogue and character interaction from the next chapter on. This was just kind of a preface, base work for the rest of the story. This is also my first time writing a story in which I strive to write long chapters, so bear with me. I'd like to clarify that the entire training description summary takes place between the ages of 8 to 11. Sasuke and Naruto won't be godlike, as some enemies will actually be a challenge to them, and the progression of their training may seem a little unrealistic, but Kage Bunshin is basically a strength boost cheat. In all seriousness though, the usefulness of the technique shouldn't be underestimated, and for as much chakra and control as they had by the time they got the technique, they'd been increasing their chakra control and reserves since they started training. Both could use the technique to the utmost efficiency, making as many as possible with as little chakra as possible, so try not to nitpick so much. I am sorry for the vagueness of the time that passes, as it's just a general overview of training over the course of years, even though it sounds like it's all happening at once. Another point that may come up is how mature the two seem to be, but I again attribute that to liberal use of Kage Bunshin. Keep in mind that they make a bunch of shadow clones and then get all their memories afterwards, and these are all the same person with different lines of thought, so not only does it speed up the progress of maturing, it also makes them much better thinkers, capable of thinking of a bunch of different scenarios or cases at one time. Much like Shikamaru, though they're not geniuses with an IQ above 200, they are definitely mentally older than their physical age. One last thing, reviews would be appreciated in any form, since flaming doesn't affect me, though I ask if you do that they be legitimate and not just you bagging on my story. I do hope you like it though. I can't believe I've never tried it before. Naruto only sighed as he looked away from Sasuke's frustrated face with a head shake. How many times have I told you already to stop beating yourself up over it? Sasuke only gave an amused smirk as he took in his friend's exasperation. 12. Naruto turned to Sasuke with a question on his face. You've told me 12 times. Black eyes watched the blonde's eyebrow twitch with irritation at his blunt and factual answer, finding that he was cheering himself up rather well. Of course, the reminder of what made him upset in the first place had him frowning again as they walked. Look, Sasuke, it's not exactly like you were focusing on what your eyes looked like when you witnessed the Uchiha massacre. If I recall at the time, you were stuck in the strongest Sharingan Genjutsu for 3 days, which was actually only a few seconds, and then you were unconscious for a few days. Seriously, circumstances weren't exactly on your side, and I think you were kind of too busy mourning and plotting revenge to actually think about how your entire family getting killed might have activated your Sharingan. Sasuke's hands clenched into fists in his pockets as he looked to the side, slightly embarrassed at the reminder of his obsession with revenge. I guess you're right, he managed to mutter out begrudgingly. Naruto only scoffed and made his friend grunt when he smacked him on the back unnecessarily hard, grinning at Sasuke's peeved expression. Of course I'm right. I'm always right. Sasuke only scoffed as he rubbed his shoulder. Always right, huh, so what's that energy inside us called again? Katra, was it? Naruto's face heated until it was tomato red, making Sasuke actually laugh out loud. Shut up, Tem. I was 8 years old, damn it. Before the two could continue their banter, a familiar voice stopped them. Well, if it isn't my two best customers. Both turned to the ramen chef, a little surprised that they had already arrived at their destination. The usual, he asked with a grin, one that Naruto and Sasuke responded with their own full-blown grin and smirk, respectively. Yeah, Chuki Oji-san. The usual, please. No sooner had the two sat down that Chuki was already yelling out the orders to his daughter in the kitchen. She stuck her head out to greet the two, recognizing the order. I haven't seen you two for a few days. I guess Sasuke's been making you cook for him, huh, Naruto? She laughed at his scowl before disappearing back into the kitchen. I told Sasuke I'd make him food if he's the one that bought the ingredients for both of us. I didn't actually think the Tem would up and do it. Naruto had been banking on Sasuke's dislike of going into the village more than necessary, but he'd obviously underestimated how much he liked Naruto's home cooking. Doesn't mean I'm gonna stop eating ramen though. Especially yours, old man, it's way too good to give up. At the last part, Naruto gave his award-winning grin, one that was fully reciprocated by the old man along with a quick bark of laughter. Ha, I'd expect nothing less from my #1 customer. He gave a small grin to his dark-haired customer. Sasuke may come as often as you, but he doesn't eat nearly as much. Sasuke only shook his head as their bowls were placed in front of them and openly showed a face of awe and disgust as Naruto began to inhale the 5 bowls that were placed in front of him at impossible speeds. Being able to eat that much that fast is a talent that I am glad I don't have because it's unhealthy and entirely. He grimaced as Naruto worked on his last bowl. Unnatural, Sasuke finished with a deadpan expression and bland voice. Chuki laughed outright at the boy's reaction when he noticed something about the two. Hey, Naruto, have you gotten taller? Naruto slurped up the last of his 5th bowl as Sasuke gave his friend an appraising look, answering for him. He might have. I'm always with him so I wouldn't notice. Naruto only put down the empty bowl and adjusted his goggles as he stood up, Sasuke doing the same. The two placed their money on the counter before Naruto turned to look straight at Sasuke, finding that his eyes moved just the slightest bit down in order to make eye contact. Whoa, I'm an inch taller than you. How did that happen? Before either Chuki or Sasuke could even laugh, Naruto continued. Ah, man, when Ino and Sakura notice, they're gonna pound me for looking down on Sasuke. As the unpredictable blonde ruffled his hair in frustration, the old man burst out into laughter while Sasuke only shook his head with a smirk on his face, leading out the frustrated ninja in training. Naruto sighed as they walked off, his usual too large grin taking up half his face, his hands behind his head as the two walked through the village, people avoiding the two like the plague, somehow finding themselves suddenly distracted with their children, a nearby shop or whatever is in their hands. As they got further and further away from the village, and closer to the stairs at the foot of the Hokage monument, Naruto's smile lessened and lessened until he had on a serious expression, one most would think unusual for Naruto. Sasuke only sighed as they climbed the stairs to make their way to their usual spot atop the Yondaime's head. Why do you insist on wearing that idiot mask, Anyu? Naruto only chuckled lightly as they sat themselves down, looking out at the village with the sun coloring the sky pastel oranges and pinks. How many times have I told you not to call me that? On top of it being respectful, the one saying it is the proud Uchiha, and you're technically older than me by a few months. Overall it's downright creepy, so stop it, he stated bluntly, mock shivering at certain points for emphasis. Sasuke only gave a dry chuckle in return. I'll stop calling you Aniu the day you decide to officially change your name to Namikaze Naruto. A groan was his response, letting his head fall to rest on his raised knee. It'll be a while before that can happen. If I ever get the chance to. Sasuke only smirked in victory. Exactly, so why don't you just get used to it, Aniu? Naruto only sighed and looked back up at the village, watching the sun begin to touch the lining of trees beneath it, the oranges and pinks having turned into burnt orange and red. Both were silent as the sun continued to disappear behind the trees. Why are you so insistent on calling me that? Recognizing Naruto's serious tone, he responded in kind, answering truthfully, but not bothering to take his eyes off the village, not wanting to miss the always incredible sight the sunset provided. From the first day that you approached me, that day at the dock, you never really seemed younger than me. Naruto sent his friend a confused glance. Obviously I'm not talking about physically since you were a midget back then. Sasuke expertly ignored Naruto's glare and continued, and I also had the preconceived notion that you were a pranking, ramen, orange-loving doby. Naruto snorted at that, making Sasuke smirk before his expression turned serious again. But then we started hanging out and talking more, and even though at first you tried to hide it, your true personality was starting to surface. Certain things you said and did, things I'd catch you reading or writing before you hid it, were way beyond what the dead last should have been capable of. Naruto shifted, uncomfortable of the reminder of when he hid his true self from his friend. His eyes widened when he saw one of Sasuke's rare, true smiles on the Uchiha's stern face. Then you trusted me enough to drop the mask, then later telling me your most important secrets. Sasuke clenched his hand on his shirt, fisting it over his heart. I admit at first that I thought the reason you were so smart and mature was because of who your father is and what's inside you, but it couldn't have been since you didn't know about it until you told me yourself. Naruto as well had clenched his hands into fists, staring down at them and giving a weak laugh. Come on, Sasuke, you didn't really think I was smart and mature, did you? I had to use a kanji dictionary for all those books I read and it took me way too long to finish even the shortest one. Heck, I could barely write my own name before you helped me out. Sasuke only shook his head. This is exactly what I'm talking about. It wasn't your fault, the teachers intentionally taught you wrong and tried every way possible to sabotage you, but as soon as I taught you the right way, you took to it like a fish to water. I rarely had to repeat something even if it did take you a while to understand it. His brows furrowed as he continued speaking. When you kept getting stronger so fast while we were training, I couldn't understand how, and I was jealous, wanting that strength to defeat my brother, but when you told me your reasons for trying so hard, Sasuke remembered the day he had simply asked Naruto, telling me you were growing stronger to protect your precious people, to protect your home, your village, and to prove to those who have mistreated you your entire life. And the whole time you were striving towards a goal people constantly told you was impossible for someone like you. Sasuke took a few deep breaths as he took in the sight of the entire village, the significance of such a scene. Naruto had taught him that the Uchiha didn't define Konoha, the Uchiha was only a part of Konoha, a rather small part if one took into account all the separate clans, non-clan ninja, and civilians. And while Sasuke still valued his clan, he understood that it was not superior towards the village or anyone in it, that he was a member of Konoha and that was where his loyalty should lie. Naruto taught him that strength came from the will to protect, not just the desire for revenge. It was Naruto that taught him to really understand the will of fire that Konoha was so well known for. He turned to Naruto, showing him his own will of fire, the fire that Naruto had ignited in him. I call you Aniu because I respect you. I respect you because you are stronger than me. You also made me understand how you gained that strength. I respect your determination, I support your goal, and I trust in your will of fire. He faced Naruto full on, his back straight and his eyes serious. You are my first and only best friend. You are family in all but blood, closer and more trustworthy than my own family was, and an even better older brother than Itachi ni was. Naruto stared wide-eyed at Sasuke, watching as he held up his hand, palm front and fingers spread slightly. Onyu. Naruto shook away the emotion that threatened to water his eyes, giving Sasuke a warm, goofy smile as he clasped their hands together, still raised in the air. Ototo. Naruto responded happily before both let go, only to surprise Sasuke when he used that same hand to flick him on the nose, making the Uchiha let out an uncharacteristic yelp of pain and shock. Naruto's eyes twinkled in amusement as Sasuke raised his hands up to his nose as if to cover it from further assault. My, that was the longest I've heard you speak in a while. Naruto gave a mischievous smirk. Are you professing your undying love to me, Otuto? If so, many of your fangirls will be very disappointed. Sasuke's cheeks reddened as he sputtered behind his hands, making Naruto laugh out loud. Shut up, Onyu, I can't believe you said that. He shouted indignantly, only making Naruto laugh harder. Eventually, Sasuke couldn't help but join Naruto in his laughter, finding his amusement rather contagious. The two eventually quieted down, lapsing into a comfortable silence as they turned their attention to the darkened sky, the stars sparkling brightly now that the sun had gone. Guess we're spending the night here again, huh? Sasuke nodded mutely, laying back with his hands behind his head. It's not like we need to go back for clothes. At least not since we learned the Kage Bunshin. Naruto also laid back with a smile. Are you talking about how we sent them for clothes or how they expanded our little underground hideout to a 5-room, 2-floor base? Both, he replied with a smirk, remembering how many clones they had expended on that project of theirs, one that was very well worth it and impressive for 2 academy students in his opinion. The two had camped rather constantly in the sparse forestry found a good distance away from the buildings visible from the village atop the mountain, and it was Naruto who discovered the small, natural cave on the other end of the forest that served well as a secret hideaway for 2 small boys. When they began to grow, they expanded the cave and used it more to store extra tools and rations in case they stayed too long while they trained in the privacy of the forest, since the cave was right in front of a clearing that served well for training purposes. After a while the two had begun to camp there as well, learning to get food by hunting the little game there was in the forest and foraging for any edible plants and berries. It was good training. When the weather had begun to turn from the warms of summer to the more bitter cold of fall, the two realized that they would not be able to camp out if the weather did not allow for it, since they had no real shelter. The cave was too small to comfortably fit the two anymore, even if they did remove anything they had stored there. Their camping trips had come to a temporary halt, but it did not last long, seeing as they soon after made the trip to the tower that gained them the Kage Bunshin technique. Naruto had wasted not time in sending a small group of clones to work on expanding the cave while the original and Sasuke trained. It became almost ridiculously easy to make the cave bigger when Naruto learned some earth jutsu, making a certain little dream of his quite possible. It was Naruto who had always dreamed of having a super awesome secret base Dadbao. So he was quick to implement his dream now that he had the means, though the actual structure was thankfully much more practical than his original, and admittedly juvenile, design of having nearly a palace underground rather than the simple 2-floor, 5-room design he stuck with. The first floor was actually directly beneath the cave, a naturally hidden hole in the ground of the cave permitting them entrance, a knotted rope all they used to climb up since they tended to simply hop down. The first floor consisted of a spacious area that was roughly around 2,169 square feet. There was some walled areas that served as empty rooms that soon became 2 bedrooms, a library, a storage area for equipment of any kind, an extra room with no specific use, and the 5th room was something of a shared study, workspace for Naruto and Sasuke's more table or quiet-oriented hobbies. On the wall adjacent to the rooms were smooth stone counters that were hollowed out and contained built-in shelves for some, obviously meant to be a kitchen of sorts. The entire floor was supported by well-placed, simple stone columns that ensured it would not cave in even in case of an earthquake or attack. The second floor could be entered through a wooden trapdoor the two had made after the bare bones were completed and served as a near-empty, no-room, area that served as their training ground. The spaced columns scattered across the area served well for their chakra control and getting used to fighting while sticking to vertical surfaces. Both floors had been rather barren for a time, but the two eventually began to add furniture, sparsely decorating the first floor walls with the occasional painting or picture, though any pictures shown were of scenery. It was when the duo had begun gaining hobbies and training in a specific area that their base began to look more than Spartan. Sasuke's and Naruto's best calligraphy hung on the walls, most of them quotes of previous Hokages or certain kanji characters for certain words like bonds, determination, fire, etc. Naruto's study of botany began to show as he had started adding potted plants anywhere he could, all of the plants used to low lighting. Lighting, at first had been a problem since they had no outlets for electricity and had to contend with candles and gas, oil lamps, at least until Naruto started learning more about sealing. Fuinjutsu was a small godsend for the efficiency of their base. Adjusted flash seals along the walls and ceilings of the floors gave the place proper lighting that could be adjusted with a visible master seal that controlled all the others and was attuned to only their chakra. Security seals at the entrance of the first and second floor ensured that they would be the only ones getting in since the seal required the blood and chakra of an individual to be keyed in. Privacy and shock-proofing seals ensured that no one would be able to hear them, no matter how much noise they made, and the Sandaime couldn't even scry them on his crystal ball. Naruto had really outdone himself when he created specific seals to allow for a fully functioning kitchen and allowed them to have a bathroom as well. Adjustable heating seals served as a usable stove and open oven, and adjusted storage seals served as a sink after making parts of the countertops concave. A fridge was also easily doable as all it required was an adjusted heating seal that cooled instead of heated. The heating seals and water storage seals made it easy to make a bath after the bath itself had been created, the sink just as easy. The tricky part lay with the toilet. After having planned and designed seals and how they would work with a regular toilet, Naruto managed to make a working toilet, a water seal in the tank of the toilet to provide the water, that could be easily refilled via another seal, and attaching it to the flush valve that also triggered an adjusted storage seal at the bottom of the toilet that destroyed its contents as soon as the toilet emptied itself. It was kind of gross to think about, but worth it in the long run since they didn't have to go out into the woods just to do their business, and it helped that you couldn't see or hear the process happening in the seal. Though it was true that it was Naruto's childish dream to have a secret base, the effort put into making it so homey was to have a safe place to stay where he would be able to relax without worry and spend however long he wanted with Sasuke. Sasuke himself was of a similar opinion, but more because he did not like going back home to an empty clan compound, and he knew Naruto did not like going back to a ratty, empty apartment. The base served as a safe haven from their empty homes and kept them from the prying eyes of the villagers, allowing them to train in secret and with peace of mind. It was also a very convenient place to hide the scrolls of copied jutsu and other things that they'd acquired from Hokage Tower. Remembering all this, Sasuke didn't mind at all that they would be spending the night there again. It'd definitely be a nice break since Iruka-sensei's really been on our cases about studying and stuff, Naruto half complained, making Sasuke look over at him incredulously. Don't you know why he's pushing you so hard recently? Naruto just shrugged. I don't know. I figured it had to do with the prank my clone pulled recently while we were training. He grinned at remembering himself using the sexy no jutsu transformation technique on the Hokage while Iruka was there to hand in some academy reports. Man, the looks on their faces were priceless. Naruto couldn't believe how much blood spurted from their noses before they passed out. Anyu, the graduation exams are in 2 days. What? Naruto shouted as he sat up abruptly. Oh crap, and this is the time I'm actually trying to graduate. I haven't even started preparing yet. Sasuke sat up as well, giving his older brother a strange look. What do you need to prepare for? You already know all the material that'll be covered. It'll be cakewalk for you to, barely, pass. Naruto shook his head vigorously, his brows furrowing as he crossed his legs, settling into a thinking pose. Not that. I have to make preparations for my big graduation prank. After we become official Konoha Genin, I'll have less time to pull pranks on the unsuspecting populace, so I have to do something that the village won't forget anytime soon. Sasuke audibly smacked his forehead with his palm, groaning as he ran his hand down his face and shaking his head in exasperation. Only you, Anyu. Naruto grinned. You better believe it. There's only one Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto after all. He stated proudly, pointing a thumb at his chest. Early the next morning, Naruto's laughter had abruptly stopped at the sound of that particular voice, paling and gulping as he looked up at the one person he didn't want to see. What the hell? How does Iruka-sensei still find me when even Jonin and Anbu can't? He's a censor, right? He has to be a censor. Naruto thought frantically as he scrambled to escape, only to be grabbed by the back of his jacket by a very angry academy teacher. What the hell are you doing during class time? Desecrating the Hokage monument. What are you thinking, you idiot? Naruto only offered Iruka-sensei his foxy grin as he was reminded of his masterpiece. He looked at the monument in all its graffitied glory. The Shidaim's cheeks were emblazoned with the Uzumaki clan symbol, and on his forehead in beautiful kanji was written, Tree Hugger. The Nadime's face was the least painted on, as it only had two glistening tears on the edge of his eyes and the impression that he was biting his lower lip, employing the dreaded puppy eye jutsu. The Sandame's face was also rather simple in that he had reddened cheeks, a small nosebleed and, Arrow Jiji, written on his forehead. What Naruto was most proud of, however, was the face of his father. All he had done was add color to the face and added his own whisker marks, showing just how much he resembled the Yondaime. Of course, his fun leading around the elite ninja of the village was stopped when Iruka caught him, tied him up, and dragged him to class. Naruto grunted when Iruka plopped him down and clicked his tongue in irritation at getting caught, turning his face away and pouting like a brat. Iruka only set a stern glare at him, his arms crossed. Tomorrow is the Ninja Academy's graduation exam. You've failed the last 2 times. Naruto watched in hidden amusement as the vein on Iruka's forehead throbbed when he pointed an accusing finger down at the whiskered blonde. This is no time to be causing trouble, moron. Naruto only gave an irritated sigh and looked away lazily. Yeah. He struggled to hold back a snicker when he thought he audibly heard the remains Iruka's patience snap. The angry sensei turned to the class then. Time for a review test on the Henge no Jutsu. Everyone line up. What? The entire class seemed to chorus, sans one Uchiha of course. Transform perfectly into me, Iruka instructed his students. Naruto yawned as he waited for his turn, grinning when his name was called. Transform. Sexy no Jutsu. The very, Naruto, her naughty bits barely covered by some smoke, posed erotically and blew a kiss to the shocked Iruka, making him have another nosebleed. Yahahaha. How'd you like seeing that jutsu again, Iruka-sensei? Of course Iruka held Naruto back after he woke up and class had ended, quick to yell. You dumbass. I told you not to use that stupid jutsu anymore. And of course, Iruka also issued out the punishment of Naruto having to clean the Hokage monument of his art, though Naruto knew that his teacher would have given him the punishment regardless of whether or not he chose to employ his perverted jutsu. I won't let you go home until you clean all of it. Iruka stated with a scowl, his arms crossed as he eyed Naruto, who was scrubbing away at the Shidaime's face. Like I care, it's not like there's anyone waiting at home anyways. I'm glad I used water-soluble paint, and that I told Sasuke not to expect me today, but man, cleaning this will be tedious without shadow clones. Bah, Naruto just started scrubbing harder, wanting to get this over with. Naruto squinted up at Iruka suspiciously, wary of the softer tone. Now what? Iruka was squatted on the Shidaime's headband, a finger scratching a slightly flushed cheek, his eyes looking away. Well, if you clean this all up, I'll buy you some ramen tonight. Naruto's face lit up like it was Christmas morning. Free ramen. Alright. Naruto stripped off his bulky jacket, leaving him in his black t-shirt. Okay. I'll work hard. I will. Naruto exclaimed with renewed enthusiasm. Later at Ichiraku's, Naruto continued to expertly slurp his noodles as he turned squinted eyes to Iruka. Why'd you do that to the monument? Don't you know who the Hokage are? Naruto resisted the urge to sweat drop. Iruka-sensei, you've lectured on the Hokage a million times. Even if you think I'm an idiot, isn't that a little much? Naruto replied readily. Of course. Basically those that receive the Hokage name are the strongest ninja in the village, right? And among them is the fourth, a hero who saved the village from a fox demon. He made sure to respond with his mouth full of food. Gotta keep up the mask a little longer after all. Then why? Iruka asked while Naruto stuffed his face. One day I'm gonna get the Hokage name. He finished up his bowl and dramatically pointed his chopsticks at Iruka, a confident grin on his face, and then I'm going to surpass all the previous Hokages. Iruka only continued to chew his noodles as he stared. Naruto grinned as he squinted and raised his hands, his palms pressed together. By the way, sensei, I have a request. What you want seconds? He asked as he continued to chew. No. Can I borrow your leaf head protector? -3 inches. I wonder if maybe I've gotten a little too good at acting childish. That's not to say I'm not actually like this sometimes. I think Sasuke would attest to that. Oh, this. He fingered the headband with his right hand. No, this is for after you graduate. This is a symbol that you've come of age. Maybe you'll get one tomorrow. Maybe. Gee, thanks for the vote of confidence. Naruto pouted and immediately changed attitude. Stingy. Iruka only laughed at his student. So that's why you took off your goggles. Naruto retorted swiftly and effectively. Seconds. Naruto shouted to Tsuki. I'll hit him where it hurts. His wallet. Iruka's eyes bulged at his shout. Huh. Naruto yawned as he slumped on his desk, the written portion having been completed a while ago. Iruka's voice had the whiskered blonde looking up lazily, however. Now for the final part of the exam, you must perform henge, substitution, and clone jutsu. When you are called, come to the next room. Naruto suppressed another yawn as he waited for his name to be called. The Academy 3, should be easy enough. Maybe I'll make too many clones and overload them a bit to make the coloring a little off. Don't want to pass with flying colors and get moved up from dead last. Naruto, excitedly, ran out of the room when his name was called, hungrily eyeing the headbands on the table when he entered the test room. He noticed that there was only one headband that had a black cloth. Definitely grabbing that one. Alright Naruto, show us a henge, transform into anyone. He glared harshly at the blonde, except that perverted jutsu. Naruto only grinned. Of course not, Iruka-sensei. Henge no jutsu. Naruto immediately performed a henge, not giving Iruka the opportunity to speak again, turning into an exact replica of the fourth Hokage, mildly surprising the two watching since the similarities were made glaringly obvious as the Naruto practically looked like a mini Yondaime. Naruto only continued grinning while in the henge. Very good. That's acceptable. Now perform a substitution with the chair a few feet away from you. Iruka managed to get out. Naruto did just that, not even bothering to call out the name, only doing the hand signs again, slightly surprising the two. Very good, Naruto, Iruka said happily, proud of Naruto, before his enthusiasm slightly died down. Alright, and now clone jutsu. Naruto pretended to take a shaky, concentrated breath as he made the appropriate hand signs. Bunshin no jutsu. Naruto was prepared to slightly overload the technique when he realized that someone else was doing it for him. In the split second between the activation of the jutsu and smoke covering Naruto, the whiskered Jinchuriki noticed Iruka's assistant, Mizuki, was giving him a mean smirk, making a single hand sign beneath the table. Naruto's eyes narrowed as the smoke surrounded him. That idiot Mizuki-tem is trying to purposely make me fail. It's too bad for him I accounted for chakra disruption, even if it's not my own chakra doing it. After the smoke dissipated, there were 6 near-perfect copies of Naruto. Some of the clones had colors too dark or colors too pale, but they all were upright and acted normal. Iruka examined them carefully before writing on his clipboard. That's very good, much better than your last attempt. The coloring could use work and you made a few too many, but it's acceptable. Iruka looked up at his student with a grin. Congratulations, Naruto, you pass. Naruto gave a grin that looked like it threatened to split his face. Both teachers jumped slightly when Naruto darted towards them and snatched up the only headband with a black cloth. Alright, I passed. Wait till I tell Gigi. He shouted excitedly, pumping his fist in the air as he jumped around in celebration. Iruka only chuckled while an angry and frustrated Mizuki expertly hid his irritation and put on a nice guy face. Good job, Naruto, but try not to leave until everyone else has finished their test, alright? Naruto himself hid his suspicion and only nodded enthusiastically at his second teacher. Whatever you say, Mizuki-sensei. Naruto shouted at him as he strutted out the door, holding the headband still in his hand with a bone-white grip. Naruto couldn't help but become slightly depressed as he took in all the parents praising their kids, unable to help but think of what it would have been like if his parents had still been alive. Great job. That's my son. Now you're a man. I'm so proud of you. I'm going to make your favorite dinner. Naruto shook his head to get rid of his depressing thoughts, finding comfort in thinking of how his Gigi would react when he told him and the celebration with Sasuke waiting at their base. Hey, that kid. Naruto's ears perked up, recognizing the tone of voice. Yeah, that's him. I can't believe they passed that thing. That's horrible. Something that dangerous shouldn't be allowed to become a shinobi. Especially since he's. Hey, we can't talk about that. Naruto put on his goggles, not feeling like putting on Konoha's symbol at the moment, glad he had told Sasuke to leave as soon as he could, otherwise he would have probably killed those two shinobi for what they said about his respected Onyu. Naruto only sighed as he walked off, using the back road to avoid anyone, only for Mizuki to call his name. Naruto. Said blonde whirled around as if surprised, though he had sensed Mizuki since a while ago. Mizuki-sensei. Naruto resisted the urge to groan when Mizuki kneeled down with one of the most false smile he had ever seen. Don't let what those people say get you down. You trained hard to pass today after all. Naruto only mumbled a half-hearted agreement, dejectedly looking down as he kicked up a little dirt. Naruto saw Mizuki's little smirk before he suddenly looked sympathetic. Hey, wanna know a special secret? Naruto peeked up at his suspicious sensei curiously. This oughta be good, Naruto thought dryly. I should talk to Gigi about how it's way too easy to break in here, Naruto thought with a sweat drop as he snuck around the tower. I mean, seriously. I'm wearing my bright orange jumpsuit and have been sneaking around with academy-level stealth skills. Where the hell is everyone? Naruto, what are you doing at my house at this hour? I sighed in exasperation and whirled to be face to face with the Sandame. Finally. About time someone showed up. I've been waiting for someone to catch me since I started climbing the side of the tower. Naruto exclaimed, exasperated, only serving to confuse the Hokage greatly. Wait, what? Why in the world are you trying to get caught? Naruto's brow scrunched up as he crossed his arms, the entire image looking rather funny as Naruto tried to look serious. Well, Mizuki-sensei came up to me after I had passed today and told me about this extra credit test I could take to up my score. Naruto watched in hidden interest as the Hokage stiffened at this. Yeah, he's definitely a traitor, though it was pretty obvious after he told me about the test. Oh, the Hokage asked with forced amusement and nonchalance. And what is this test he gave you? Naruto shrugged. Break into the Hokage tower, find some scroll labeled, forbidden, or something and learn one jutsu from it at a secret meeting spot while I waited for him there, all without getting caught. I thought it was a little fishy, so I decided to tell you about it. Naruto saw the subtle hand motion he made that summoned an Anbu from somewhere. Well, I'm glad you told me, Naruto. I think I'm going to assign you your first mission. Naruto perked up immediately at that while the Hokage turned to the Anbu. Cat, go get the forbidden scroll for me. Naruto was nearly bouncing off the walls at the prospect of a mission. Well, what is it, Gigi? Tell me, the Hokage chuckled at his surrogate grandson's enthusiasm. Listen carefully, Naruto. This is going to be an A- rank mission. Naruto's eyes began to sparkle excitedly. Your mission is to draw out the traitor Chunin Mizuki. What are the parameters of the mission? Naruto questioned as Kat came back with the scroll in her hands. Naruto internally smacked himself when the Hokage looked startled at the question, but hoped the curious childlike gaze he was sending him would disarm the old man, which it thankfully did. He smiled as he handed Naruto the scroll, watching as the blonde strapped it to his back. The Anbu will be following you from the shadows but will step in only if you are in danger of dying. That's comforting, Naruto thought, not that it's any different from how they guarded me as a kid. I'd like you to knock him out, but you are allowed to use deadly force if necessary. Naruto nodded and grinned. Alright, they'd prefer him alive, but I've got the okay to kill him. Nice to know. Naruto made his way over to the window. Understood, Gigi. I'll be back in no time, so you better get my pay ready. The Hokage only chuckled, but stopped him as Naruto was already halfway out the window. Naruto, the blonde looked back questioningly. What would you have done if Mizuki was telling the truth and this really was a test? Naruto only gave a mischievous grin that sent a shiver down the old man's spine. That's easy, Gigi. I woulda just used my sexy no jutsu on ya and run off after finding the scroll. Naruto laughed at the Hokage's shocked and mortified expression as he leapt out the window to make his way to where Mizuki Tem had told him to go. Naruto was catching his breath, sitting on the forest floor as he got his heart rate back to normal. Damn, Mizuki Tem must have gone around telling everyone I stole the scroll. No other way all the ninja of the village would know to chase me around this particular night. I'm so giving him a good pounding. I've found you. Hey. Naruto's head snapped up to see an angry, smiling, and shaking Iruka. Are you kidding me? How the hell did he find me? Oh crap, oh crap, oh crap. Think. Naruto immediately jumped up with a grin, posing as he pointed at Iruka with both hands. Oh, I found the nose bleeder. It was then Iruka employed his famous, big head, jutsu. Idiot. I found you. Naruto only scratched the back of his head, while Iruka huffed in irritation. The blonde chuckled lightly. You found me. I've only learned one skill. Iruka put his hands on his hips. Hey, you're all beaten up. What were you doing? Naruto glanced at his beaten up clothes, noting all the small scrapes and bruises on his skin. Well, I had to pass the time somehow, so why not spar with my shadow clones? Naruto only grinned excitedly at his teacher. Never mind that. Hey, I'm gonna try an incredible jutsu. If I do it, I get a higher passing score, right? Naruto mentally rolled his eyes. I think I'm starting to feel insulted that people actually think I'm this stupid. I can't wait until the day of team assignments. Naruto only squatted slightly as he made the hand sign for the Kage Bunshin, but not actually performing it, pretending to take time to concentrate. Naruto, Iruka called. HN. He asked, borrowing the Uchiha's famous monosyllable. Where did you get that scroll on your back? Naruto straightened. Oh, this. He looked back at the scroll. Mizuki-sensei told me about it and about this place too. It'd be nice if you figure this out soon, Iruka-sensei. Mizuki's getting closer. He said if I showed you this skill, I'd definitely be Rookie of the Year. Both Iruka and Naruto stiffened as they felt and or heard a volley of kunai coming their way. Iruka was the first to react, pushing Naruto out of the way before he could leap away on his own, leaving Iruka to get hit. Crap. This Tem has horrible timing. Maybe training with my clones wasn't such a good idea. Naruto thought as he struggled to feign ignorance and idiocy, looking between the crouching Mizuki on a tree branch and the injured Iruka. Nice job in finding him. Mizuki mocked his childhood friend, his arm still outstretched from when he threw the kunai, two large shuriken tied to his back. Iruka glared at the traitorous Chunin. I see, so that's what going on. Naruto, meanwhile, was silently releasing his weight seals, knowing Genin's speed wasn't going to cut it. Naruto, give me the scroll. Naruto twitched at having been addressed, covering up his tenseness by looking stupidly between his sensei and the traitor, sending Iruka a nervous grin. Hey, what's going on here? Hey. Iruka responded to the exchange by struggling of the wall he was leaning off, pulling a bloody kunai out of his chest though more littered his body. Naruto, don't give him the scroll even if you die. Mizuki only stood with a smirk. That is a dangerous scroll that has forbidden ninjutsu sealed within it. Mizuki used you in order to get his hands on it. Naruto took this as his cue to look shocked before standing and looking pissed and determined. Mizuki's only response was to grin and look down at him condescendingly. Naruto, there's no point in you having it. I'll tell you the truth. Naruto tensed, Iruka as well, both dreading what they knew was coming. No, don't. Iruka yelled out futilely. Oh geez, don't tell me Mizuki Tem's that stupid. Don't tell me he's going to. 12 years ago, you know about the demon fox being sealed, right? Naruto internally sighed. Yeah, he really is that stupid. And he's technically wrong, too. I'm a being that's made entirely out of chakra. I'm much more powerful than some measly demons, but what do you expect from a stupid hairless flesh bag? Since that incident, a new rule was created in the village. Naruto's eyes became wide at that, looking at Mizuki in false confusion. A rule? He asked in a naive tone. Kurama, what are you doing awake? He asked his furry partner. The fox's response was to scoff. You kidding? This is the most eventful thing that's happened since you met me. You think I'm going to miss out on some entertainment after being stuck in a dank sewer for nearly 10 years? Not to mention the hundreds of years stuck in your mom and grandma. God, those two were such. But Naruto, this rule was never told to you. Naruto was glad for the interruption, not wanting to hear Kurama cursing his family. I can hear your thoughts, you know. Naruto ignored him in favor of getting back to his pro acting. Not to me. Why? What is this rule? Mizuki began to chuckle menacingly under his breath. What kind of rule is it? He smirked at Naruto as he answered. The rule is that nobody's allowed to talk about the fact that you're the demon fox. What? Did that worthless shitstain just mistake me for a tiny little meat bag? Huh. Inwardly, Naruto was fuming at the fox's outburst. Excuse me, he thought in a falsely sweet tone. What do you mean? Who I totally think better of compared to the rest of you tiny humans, since, you know, you're all kinda small to me. I am supposed to be bigger than even your Hokage monument, and you kind of look the same to me, well, most of you. I only bother remembering my enemies and well, there's you, but seriously, you're all so small, like ants or something, no wait, fleas. Yeah, that's a good size comparison. Stop it, Iruka yelled, bringing Naruto back from being entertained by Kurama's form of an apology. It means that you, Mizuki continued, unaffected, are the nine-tailed demon that killed Iruka's parents and destroyed the village. Naruto froze, in shock, at the revelation. You were sealed up by the Hokage that you admire and... Stop it, Iruka repeated vainly, Mizuki going on as if uninterrupted. And you have been lied to by everyone. Didn't you find it odd how everyone hated you? Naruto didn't have to try as hard as he thought he would to force tears down his cheeks, Mizuki reminding him too well of the negativity he's had to endure over the years. Mizuki only continued grinning, grabbing one of the large shuriken on his back as he continued to shout. Mizuki started spinning the large shuriken in his hand. Iruka is the same. He actually hates you. Naruto only ground his teeth in frustration. Nobody will ever accept you. Naruto was prepared to block the large shuriken thrown his way, a kunai waiting in his sleeve to be thrown at Mizuki, when Iruka again interfered by knocking him down and taking the projectile to his back. Naruto didn't have to fake the shock this time, staring up at Iruka in wide-eyed horror, a drop of his warm blood leaving a trail following the path of one of his whisker marks. Why, my parents. After they died, there was no one to compliment me or acknowledge me. I was so sad. I would always act like an idiot to get people's attention, since I wasn't able to do well in things like school. I'd get attention that way. It was better than being nothing, so I kept acting like an idiot. It was so painful. Tears began to cascade down Iruka's cheeks, dropping down onto Naruto's own and cleaning of the drop of blood that had fallen previously. Yeah, Naruto, you must have been in a lot of pain too. I'm sorry, Naruto. If I had done a better job, you wouldn't have had to feel like this. At that moment, the blonde wanted nothing more than to tell Iruka he was wrong, that just treating him normally was enough, that he wasn't in so much pain anymore. Naruto wanted so badly to tell him that he had found precious people, and that Iruka was already one of those people, but now wasn't the time. Right now the whiskered Jinchuriki had a mission to do. He swallowed once, a look of determination crossing his face when he glanced at Mizuki, and then ran off into the woods. Gotta lead the traitor Tem away from Iruka, or at least distract him by running away with the scroll since Iruka-sensei has been getting in the way so much, even though his intentions are good at heart. The blonde had been running for a few minutes when he suddenly received the memories of two cage bunshin he'd made almost as soon as he was out of sight of Iruka and Mizuki. Many colorful and inventive curses about stupid traitors and meddlesome teachers left his mouth as he came to a sudden stop and turned on his heel, darting in the direction that his cage bunshin had last seen the two. Of course Naruto made it just in time to hear Mizuki accuse the blonde as being the same as the traitor, a statement that had the Jinchuriki growling under his breath. If you use the skills in that scroll, you can do whatever you want. There's no way the demon fox wouldn't try to use that power. Kurama, who had been rather quiet for a while, started up again. What the hell is with all these ridiculous assumptions about me? Exclamation mark. Where in the flying does he get his information? Why would I be interested in your paltry tricks when I can cause earthquakes and tsunamis with a flick of my tails, bitches? Naruto only sighed internally at how worked up Kurama could get sometimes, focusing instead on the conversation at hand, wondering when the best time to jump in would be. Yeah, the demon fox would do that. Seriously, the is wrong with these flesh bags? Do they know me on a personal level? No, all I did was kill a bunch of their family and comrades. You think these losers would get over it already? I mean, they live in a ninja village, the hell did they expect? Sunshine and rainbows. You don't see them getting pissed at some other village for attacking them and killing a bunch of people. Who does Konoha think they are? IWA. After realizing that the fox wasn't going to stop rambling anytime soon, Naruto elected to start tuning him out. But Naruto is different. I've acknowledged him as one of my excellent students. He may not take things seriously, and he's clumsy so nobody accepts him. He already knows what it feels like to have pain in your heart. Iruka's voice became more solid and determined as he went on. He was never the demon fox, he is a member of Konoha. He's Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto's knuckles had gone bone white, his fists shaking as he stood and listened to his sensei verbally acknowledge him. The chaos of emotions he felt inside him was something he'd only ever felt when Sasuke had said something very similar to him when he'd told the Uchiha the truth. Okay, whatever. Mizuki's voice had Naruto getting straight back to mission mode, suppressing his feelings for the moment. Iruka, I said I would take care of you later, but I've changed my mind. Naruto tensed, seeing the traitor grab his other large shuriken and begin to spin it. Hurry up and die, Naruto growled again, this time louder. Not while I'm here, he's not. Naruto immediately shot forwards, his forehead colliding with Mizuki's so fast that the traitor didn't even see it coming. Naruto clicked his tongue in irritation when pieces of broken metal fell from his forehead, his headband having shattered from the impact. He ripped off the black cloth, tossing it aside. You'd think those things would be more sturdy, or maybe I used a little too much strength. Mizuki got up shakily, glaring death at the whiskered blonde. You should not have done that. Naruto only straightened, knowing that the tem was all talk no bite. Don't touch Iruka-sensei, he glared at Mizuki, throwing in a little killing intent, or I'll kill you. You idiot, why'd you come out? Run away. Naruto resisted the urge to sweat drop or let his face fall from its serious expression. Gee, you're welcome, Iruka-sensei. No big deal, I only just saved your life. Shut up, he shouted at Iruka before turning to me with a grin. A punk like you, I'll kill in one shot. Naruto only continued glaring, making a single seal with his hands. Try it, trash, I'll return the pain 1,000 times over. This only seemed to anger the traitor. Then do it, demon fox. Naruto needed no further prompting. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. He said it mostly for Iruka's sake as he could actually perform the technique without saying, and without the hand sign, but he kept up the act for the sake of theatrics. Thousands of clones popped into existence, so many that some were perched on the trees, all of them grinning down at Mizuki. Wah, what's going on? What's wrong? All the clones asked. Weren't you going to kill me with one shot? Some snickered when Mizuki could only fall on his in shock. Well then, all the Narutos began to roll up their sleeve or pound their fist into their hand. Why don't I start things off? All that could be heard for the next half hour was the sound of Mizuki's screams of pain, ones that left the original Naruto very satisfied, times 1,000 since he dispelled all his clones. Naruto scratched the back of his head as he took in Mizuki's beaten body at his feet. I think I may have gotten carried away. He stared at the bloody pulp for a moment. Well, at least I left him alive, and it'll be much easier for the T and I to break him after this. Iruka jumped when an Anbu suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Ah, cat, I was wondering when you'd show up. The target's alive and been disabled and the scroll is safe, though there were some. He spared a glance to a confused Iruka, complications. Cat only nodded as she took the scroll from Naruto and slung Mizuki over her shoulder. Thank you, Uzumaki-san. Please make your way to the Hokage Tower to submit a verbal report. You will receive your pay then. Naruto gave a sharp nod, and with that, the Anbu vanished just as quickly as she'd come. Iruka only sighed at the interaction, having guessed at what happened and brushing off Naruto's behavior as being unpredictable like usual. Naruto, come here. I want to give you something. Naruto tilted his head quizzically at Iruka before complying. Close your eyes for a second. Naruto was confused, but did as he was told, trusting Iruka. After a few moments, Naruto couldn't help but ask. Sensei, now, okay, you can open your eyes now. Naruto did so, immediately seeing Iruka's smiling face, his headband missing from his forehead. Since yours broke pretty quickly. Try not to break this one too soon, alright? Anyways, let's celebrate with a bowl of ramen. I'm sure the Hokage can wait for a little bit. Naruto felt his cheeks heat and his lower lip quiver with happiness. TCH, there goes my entertainment. Hey, I wonder if the old Hokage would let you watch that traitor's interrogation if you asked. Naruto ignored the fox in favor of giving Iruka an unrestrained hug, extremely happy at the meaningful gift and remembering Iruka's acceptance of him, of his acknowledgement. Ack, hey, that hurts, Iruka shouted half-heartedly. And then Kat came to take away Mizuki and the scroll. Naruto kept the part of his little moment with Iruka, and them proceeding to Ichiraku's to himself. He'd save the telling of that for Sasuke. Man, Ototo's going to be so jealous that I got to do an A- ranked mission straight out of academy. The Hokage seemed mildly impressed. Well done, Naruto. You managed to learn the Kage Bunshin and handled the situation as well as you could with Iruka there. Here's your pay for the mission. Try not to spend it all on ramen. Naruto took the proffered scroll eagerly, knowing he'd be able to buy some very nice new equipment for his Fuinjutsu, because that equipment was seriously expensive. No problem, old man. See ya later. Naruto shouted as he ran off to tell Sasuke, leaving the Hokage chuckling to himself as the orange ball of energy left. After a period of silence in the office, the Hokage discreetly looked around before opening his first desk drawer and taking out a worn orange cover book. He opened it to where a page was leafed and began to giggle pervertedly, his cheeks becoming slightly pink as a trickle of blood dribbled down his nose. The Anbu currently on duty sweat dropped at their Hokage's actions, all thinking the same thing. Shouldn't the Hokage be doing his paperwork? So Mizuki turned out to be a traitor. Sasuke stated blandly. Doesn't surprise me. I never liked him anyways. He was one of the teachers that tried to constantly sabotage you. I wish I could have kicked his myself, Sasuke muttered darkly. Naruto only rolled his eyes at the Uchiha's protectiveness. If you had kicked his, Ototo, there would be nothing left for the T&I department to work with. Sasuke only smirked. Damn right there wouldn't be. Naruto smacked him lightly on the back of his head, making the Uchiha grunt and send his brother a half-hearted glare as he rubbed the sore area. What have I told you about killing anyone that shows me signs of disrespect? He looked away, mumbling his answer sulkily. Not to as long as they're not physically harming you or trying to take your life. Naruto nodded in approval as he began to clean up the table, Sasuke doing the same as they finished their little graduation party. Good, besides we should be more focused on whatever test our Jonin-sensei is going to throw at us. Sasuke only shrugged as he started wiping down the table while Naruto started with the dishes in the sink. It's not like we can plan anything until we know where the test is going to take place and if we'll have enough time to prepare it all. We'd also have to take into account who our third member will be. Both shuddered at that, knowing just which kunoichi they might have potentially ended up with. Have I ever told you how glad I am you told that pink-haired banshee you don't like, know-it-alls? Sasuke nodded. Only after every time we see and hear her screech. It was a hasty, panicked decision on their part when they found out that the Rookie of the Year was placed with the dead last and the person with the second highest score, and since the one that fit that profile at the time was Sakura, they had made a plan immediately to change that. The plan itself was rather easy. All Naruto had to do was ask a well-timed question to what he thought of girls who tried too hard to get perfect scores on every test. Sasuke had responded that he didn't like know-it-alls that flaunted their intelligence, something Sakura had been trying to do to impress Sasuke. The effects were immediate as Sakura soon found herself slowly becoming in the low-high scores of the class, purposefully getting some things wrong in order to show her, Sasuke-kun, that she wasn't one of those girls. Well, as long as it's not Sakura. Anyone is better than Sakura. Naruto smirked as he finished washing the dishes, Sasuke placing the rag in the empty sink. Even Ino? He questioned teasingly. Sasuke only grunted. At least she actually trains occasionally. Sakura barely has enough chakra to be considered a genin. Naruto nodded, acquiescing Sasuke's point. Well, we'll see at team assignments. We'll plan after we factor in our teammate and the test. Then we'll pass and you can finally stop wearing that horrendous orange jumpsuit and start acting more like yourself. Naruto pouted at the jab to his outfit. I'll have you know that this jumpsuit provides fantastic stealth training and I happen to like the color orange. He winced when he looked down at his clothes. Just, not as much as this. Sasuke only chuckled at his Anyu's response. Don't worry, you'll only have to wear it for a little bit longer. Just a few more days and we'll both be able to show the village just how wrong they were about you. Naruto only smiled at the Uchiha's statement, surprising Sasuke by suddenly flicking his nose. Naruto smiled warmly at him and spoke before Sasuke had the chance to. Thanks, Otudo. He sent a confused glance at his brother while rubbing his smarting nose, already used to Naruto randomly flicking his nose sometimes. What for? Naruto only laughed at his inquiry. Don't worry about it. Sasuke's perplexed expression only served to make Naruto laugh harder. He knew everything would work out fine, as long as Sasuke was on his side. The next few days are going to be interesting at least. Naruto watched his surrogate grandfather in amusement as he examined Naruto's ninja registration paper carefully as if trying to find any kind of fault in the picture. The picture in question was rather average, if one thought that Naruto giving that squinty-eyed foxy grin with his hands behind his head was average, which they did. The only abnormality that the Hokage could see in the picture was that Naruto had taken off his orange jacket so he was left with his black t-shirt. The Hokage gnawed on his pipe in worry, unused to Naruto not pulling anything funny. Naruto's knowing grin at the moment wasn't helping either. What's the matter, Gigi? Something wrong with my picture? He asked innocently, though his posture spoke anything but. Naruto's jacket was still unzipped, not having bothered to do so after putting it back on, and his right elbow was resting on the back of the chair he was sitting on as he took up a decidedly lax position, his left leg stretched out in front of him. No. I'm just a little surprised you didn't, well I don't know, didn't paint your face in some ridiculous design or something. I'm still kind of waiting for something to happen. You don't have a prank plan, do you, Naruto? Why else would Naruto seem so complacent? He must be planning something. Naruto only smirked at the Sandame. I've made him so paranoid about my pranks that all I have to do is not pull any for a while to make him nervous. Naruto snickered. No, Gigi, I don't have any pranks planned. The Hokage monument was me going out with a bang. I'm on vacation from my pranking king title. The Sandame was unconvinced, only serving to further entertain the new genin. Well, I'm glad you've taken this document. He looked at the grinning picture of the blonde, somewhat seriously. This ninja registration book lists all those in the village with high abilities, so it's an important document. Naruto just waved his hand flippantly. You worry too much, Gigi. Naruto's attention turned to the door when he heard it creak open, someone running in with a shuriken in their hand, causing Naruto to take action before he could stop himself. In a split second, Naruto had a kunai against the throat of whoever was stupid enough to attack the Hokage. Naruto's eyes widened at the squeaky yelp of shock that came from whoever he was apprehending, immediately realizing his mistake. The one he held in his arms was a small boy no older than 8 wearing a ridiculously long scarf and holding a wooden shuriken. Hey, put me down, stupid. Naruto's eyebrow twitched at being called stupid by an 8-year-old. Brat, let go of Hokage-sama's grandson. Naruto turned a cold glance to whoever had yelled at him from the doorway, seeing a tall man wearing sunglasses, probably a jonin. Naruto got defensive immediately, a little embarrassed that he attacked a harmless kid. He only got angry as well when the kid spoke up again. Go ahead, punch me. Shut up. The kid shouldn't have barged in here with clear intent to attack Gigi. It's the kid's own stupid fault. He defended, his cheeks flushed in anger and embarrassment as he whacked the kid on the head. I don't care if the Hokage's your grandmother. Don't do stupid things. Naruto stormed out, still reprimanding himself over his own stupid mistake. Kurama's laughter wasn't helping any either. Hey, Kit, you got yourself a stalker and I'm not talking about the Hyuga. Naruto rolled his eyes. I know. He's been following since we left the tower. Naruto watched from the corner of his eyes as the kid ran from behind a wall to behind a pole, and he really sucks. The blonde was starting to lose his patience with the brat, so he decided to just get it over with, turning around to confront the kid. Why the hell are you following me, Gaki? A tick mark appeared on Naruto's face when the kid only poorly disguised himself against the fence with a camouflage sheet, one he was holding sideways. What the hell is that? You aren't fooling anyone. The kid only chuckled. Impressive of you to see through this. The rumors about you are true. Naruto's sweat dropped. Anyone could see through that sorry excuse for wait, what rumors? There's more than the demon fox, pranking king, orange-wearing idiot. The kid LP. Well, he did manage to say please, and it would be funny as hell to know that Gigi was being tormented with the jutsu by his own grandson. Internally, both Kurama and Naruto shared an evil grin. Do it. Naruto nodded in agreement. Alright, Gaki, I'll teach you. He watched in amusement as the boy began to shout and jump up and down in celebration. Meanwhile, back at the Hokage Tower, the Sandaime felt a horrible sense of foreboding. Naruto recoiled when the kid turned into another horrendous broad. No, you have to make her waist thinner and the face has to be heart-shaped, more beautiful. After a few more failed attempts, Naruto decided to give the kid a short break, both for him to catch his breath, and to save Naruto's eyes from any more Frankengirls. So, why do you want to defeat your grandfather? He asked as he brought his drink up to his lips. My name is Konohamaru. Grandpa named me after the village, but even though everyone here is used to that name, nobody ever calls me that. Naruto's eyes widened a little at that. When everyone sees me or calls me, all they see is the Hokage's grandson. Konohamaru's brows furrowed in frustration and anger. Nobody sees me as me and I'm sick of it. That's why I want the Hokage name. Well, becoming Hokage won't exactly fix that since people would only switch from Hokage's grandson to Hokage, but Naruto knew what it was like to not be acknowledged for who he was. He knew better than anyone. Stupid. Who would acknowledge a brat like you? Konohamaru's head snapped up. The Hokage name isn't so easy that a Gaki like you could take it. He glared at Naruto. What? Naruto only rolled his eyes. It's not that easy, idiot. Hokage, he said mockingly, if you want the title so much, then what? He shouted. Naruto only gave a mean grin to the kid, determination hardening his eyes. You have to defeat me first. The kid gulped, thoroughly intimidated, when the Jonin from the tower decided to barge in. I've found you. Konohamaru whirled around in shock while Naruto gave an annoyed sigh, having sensed him coming. The Jonin jumped down from the tree branch he was on. Now, young master, let's go home. Naruto didn't miss the cold look the Jonin had sent him before jumping down. So, he's another Kyuubi hater, huh? The Thames lucky Sasuke wasn't here to see that. I know I warned him and all, but Sasuke still finds ways to hurt them somehow. No, I'm going to defeat Grandpa and get the Hokage name. Right now, don't get in my way. Naruto's sweat dropped as Konohamaru started to perform the sexy no jutsu. He's still saying that. What happened to the declaration I gave a while ago? It seems that the Jonin had been rambling on about something when he finally realized what Konohamaru was doing. Take this. Sexy no jutsu. The Jonin's jaw dropped as Konohamaru returned to normal from the perky, brunette woman he'd turned into. It didn't work. What a vulgar skill. I am a gentleman. Such a low-class skill will never work against me. Naruto stood there, watching the two. A closet pervert, The Jonin began trying to drag Konohamaru away by his scarf. Young master, if you hang out with the likes of him, you'll just turn stupid. Excuse you. Just do what I say. I am your easiest shortcut to becoming Hokage. Now let's go home. Konohamaru struggled valiantly against the pull. No. Naruto only grinned, knowing just what jutsu to use on the idiot who dared insult him. This Jonin will be the perfect guinea pig for my new jutsu. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Naruto yelled out to capture their attention, a bunch of Narutos covering the field. Wow, that's incredible. The Jonin only scoffed, smirking as he got into a fighting position. How foolish, I am an elite tutor. I am not Mizuki. All the clones did in response was make the same hand sign. Transform. Once the smoke cleared, it revealed a bunch of blonde chicks clinging onto the Jonin. Harem no jutsu. It didn't take very long for said Jonin to get blown back by his massive nosebleed. Naruto grinned as he dispelled them all in the transformation. Damn it, I couldn't even defeat my tutor. Kono cried indignantly. I really want a name that people will acknowledge. Yet why? Naruto just bonked the kid on the back of the head. It's not that easy, dummy. He put his fists on his hips, reprimanding the boy. This is the Hokage title, the name of the greatest ninja in the village. The path to becoming stronger is painful, and I often second-guessed myself, but I finally found people that would accept me, though even that was incredibly difficult. Naruto turned away, looking at the Hokage monument. You better prepare yourself. Prepare? Kono asked naively. If you want to gain the name of Hokage, being Hokage isn't about being acknowledged. You must be acknowledged before you can become Hokage, and to be Hokage you have to be ready to lay your life on the line to protect the village, to protect your precious people, and to protect the people you don't even know, the ones who failed to acknowledge you before. Naruto turned to the kid with a grin. There aren't going to be any shortcuts. Bah. Kono turned away himself. Stop lecturing me as if you're important. A tick mark appeared on Naruto's head. I'm not letting you be my boss any longer. He turned around again. From now on, we're rivals. He gave Naruto a toothy grin. Naruto returned with a warm smile. Sorry, Gaki, but starting tomorrow, I'm taking my first step as a ninja. But hey, one day I'll fight you for the Hokage name. Naruto's warm smile grew a little wider. I'll be looking forward to it. Konohamaru. The kid saluted Naruto as he turned to walk away, the blonde only waving back lazily as he made his way back home. Sasuke took a sip of his tea, glancing at Naruto washing the dishes before returning to the scroll he was reading. So the Hokage's grandson became your lapdog? The blonde sent the Uchiha a scolding glare. Konohamaru. Konohamaru is not my lapdog. Sasuke just scoffed as he put down his tea. Well, you can't honestly tell me you actually consider the brat your rival. Naruto smirked in amusement as he dried his hands with a towel, walking over to the table and propping his head on his hand, his arm propped on the table as he examined Sasuke's poker face. Is that jealousy I detect, Otudo? The Uchiha reddened slightly, sputtering a bit before shouting instant denial. Wah, no. I just think that you deserve a better rival than some spoiled, snot-nosed kid. Naruto only laughed at the disgruntled Uchiha, flicking his nose affectionately. Don't worry, Otudo, I know that you're my one true rival. Konohamaru won't take my attention away from you. Sasuke's entire face turned tomato red at Naruto's teasing statement, whether in embarrassment or anger or both, holding his nose with one hand. He slammed his free hand against the table as he stood, Naruto laughing the entire time. Oniu. That's not funny. Of course, his reaction only made Naruto laugh harder. Though Sasuke was irritated and embarrassed, he couldn't help but feel pleased that Naruto had acknowledged their rivalry and assured that Naruto wasn't going to ditch him for some other little brother. Not that Sasuke thought he would, but he knew the effect that his Oniu had on people and was afraid that Naruto would abandon Sasuke when he found other friends, made other bonds, taking his light with him, and leaving Sasuke alone in the dark again. That thought alone frightened Sasuke more than anything. The only thing worse than that was the thought of Naruto getting killed or dying. Those were the two things that Sasuke feared the most, above even his fear of not being able to avenge his clan. He feared the loss of his best friend, and his morbid thoughts, along with past experience, made him very possessive of Naruto. The Uchiha wanted nothing more than to lock Naruto away somewhere and never let him out, but not only would Naruto kick his if he tried it, Sasuke knew he couldn't do that as much as he actually wanted to. Sasuke knew, better than anyone, that Naruto was going to create bonds. He was so selfless, but that also meant there would be people that would try to use that selflessness, try and destroy his light, and that's what Sasuke decided to focus on. He decided to stay by Naruto's side, Even if Naruto himself forgets about him, Sasuke will never stop protecting Naruto from anyone that wants to hurt him. He will continue to grow stronger to protect him, because Naruto was Sasuke's very important Onyu. Naruto yawned as he laid back on the chair, Sasuke's lips twitching in amusement at the blonde's languid actions. Naruto only eyed the Uchiha lazily, amused at the cool, brooding face he puts on in front of other people. Of course the peace was interrupted when the bubblegum princess walked up to him and started her banshee cries. Naruto, move your, I want to sit there. The blonde sweat dropped and sent a glance to Sasuke who looked the same, but if you looked closely, or were Naruto, you could tell he was angry at Haruno for yelling at his Onyu and a little nervous at the girl's eagerness. Naruto gave a languid smile, leaning forward on the desk as if preparing to get up. Well, since you asked so nicely, Sasuke, what do you think? Naruto grinned when he saw the panic flash through Sasuke's eyes at the prospect of having to sit next to the screeching fangirl. Sasuke's hand shot out, roughly grasping Naruto's upper arm and firmly keeping him in place. He sent a harsh patented Uchiha glare at the poor pink-haired girl. Haruno, find someplace else to sit, he stated coldly, making the girl's eyes widen and water slightly before she walked away. Sasuke only sighed in relief when she turned, making the blonde snicker behind his hand. Sasuke sent a more irritated glare at said blonde. Not funny, Onyu, he said under his breath as he returned to brooding. Naruto's entertainment was short-lived and by the time Iruka had entered, both boys were bored out of their minds. Usually the two had more patience than this, they would have to since they have both been hiding their true skills, Naruto his true personality as well, but it was also because of that reason that they were now impatient. They have been waiting to graduate the academy almost as long as they've been in it, all for the sole purpose of being able to show their true skills, their true colors, and not be hindered by the civilian council in any way, and now that time was finally here and every second seemed like an eternity. So of course the two were abnormally happy to see Iruka walk into the room. Beginning today, all of you are ninja, but you are still merely rookie genin. The hard part has just begun. Straight into the pep talk I see, Naruto thought, amused. Now, you will soon be assigned duties in the village. So today, we will be creating 3-man teams and each team will have a Jonin sensei. You will follow that sensei's duties as you complete the assigned duties. Kurama decided something was funny and started snickering to himself. Ha, duties. You'd think they'd choose a better word to use when they talk to a bunch of prepubescent brats. Naruto internally sweat dropped. I'm more concerned that you were juvenile enough to laugh at that, but you do have a point, missions could have worked just as easily. Iruka looked at his clipboard. We tried to balance each team's strength. While the rest of the class exclaimed in shock, Naruto and Sasuke straightened, hyper-focused on whatever was going to be said next. They ignored teams 1 to 6, next, Team 7. Naruto Uzumaki, the two perked up at his name, Sasuke Uchiha, the two only smirked at each other and pounded the side of their fists together, and Hinata Hyuga. The two looked at each other, silently communicating. Naruto sent a questioning glance at Sasuke, who only shrugged in response, signaling that it was okay, before Naruto turned to look at the bright red Hyuga, giving her a friendly smile, only for her to faint at the sight of it. Oops, Naruto whispered. Sasuke only sighed and shook his head when he caught the interaction. Team 8 will be Sakura Haruno, Kiba Inuzuka, and Shino Aburame. Team 9 is still in circulation, so Team 10 will be Shikamaru Nara, Choji Akamichi, and Ino Yamanaka. Naruto groaned and slammed his head against his desk when Sakura and Ino started to complain, by yelling. Thankfully Iruka continued, a strained smile on his face. Okay. This afternoon we'll introduce the Jonin senseis. Take a break until then. Sasuke was nervously chewing on his rice balls, looking around every now and then. Naruto had run off as soon as Iruka had given them the go-ahead, and that more than anything worried the Uchiha. What is Naruto up to? Naruto at that moment was hinged as Sasuke, trying to hold back snickers, as he silently watched Sakura sitting on the nearby bench, sending gaga eyes at him as he leaned against a tree across from her in a cool guy pose, sending her a smirk. After thinking enough time had passed, He straightened and made it look like he was walking away, internally snickering when the girl lowered her head dejectedly, sighing. I know this is a little bit of a cruel prank, but I'd rather get my petty revenge here than out on the battlefield and accidentally get her killed if our teams ever work together. Naruto smirked, catching her attention. You sure have a large, charming forehead. Makes me want to kiss it. Naruto allowed a small smirk and light blush to color the henge's cheeks. Gag. Someone kill me, maybe this wasn't such a good idea. He looked down at her hopeful, blushing expression, before crushing them again. Just kidding. That sounds like something a loser would say. He smirked for real when she looked down, dejected again. Or maybe it really is a good idea. Sakura, there's something I want to ask you. What do you think of Naruto? Stupid, morbid curiosity, I know the answer's not going to be good. The girl pouted, looking straight ahead. He's always getting in the way of my love, and he enjoys seeing me struggle. Naruto doesn't understand anything about me, he's just annoying. All I want is, for you to acknowledge me. Naruto had been amused at first, seeing how she wasn't technically wrong, but his eyes widened at the last part, especially her choice of words. I'm serious. I would do anything. Because I like you. Naruto flinched when she started leaning closer, disgusted when she closed her eyes and puckered her lips. She doesn't know the meaning of acknowledgement. Meanwhile, a little ways away, Sasuke suddenly got a terrible feeling in his stomach. Naruto sensed tingling. Oniu did something stupid again. Sasuke quickly finished up his onigiri and ran off to find Naruto, wondering what he did this time. Back with Naruto, who was at this point shaking with ill-hidden disgust, but not wanting to blow his ill-thought-out prank by releasing the henge, instead turned away from the pucker-lipped banshee, now shaking at the close call. He stood abruptly. What's wrong? Naruto didn't even look back as he responded. I'll be right back. Not. Hell no, I'm not going back to play sucky face with the pink-haired banshee. Gross. Worst prank idea ever. It looked so much better in my head. He thought as he ran off, dropping the henge when he was out of sight. Naruto simply decided to cut his losses and go find Sasuke so they could go back to class together. Cue Sasuke making it to Sakura's location. Sasuke looked around, ignoring the girl until she decided to make her presence known. Oh, Sasuke-kun, you're so shy. Are you ready now? I sure am. Sasuke just gave her a strange look, before returning to scanning the surroundings. What the hell is she talking about? No, it doesn't matter. It's time to go. Where's Naruto? Sasuke was sure he felt Naruto around here somewhere. Haruno only laughed forcibly. Don't change the subject. Who cares about Naruto? All he does is bug you. Sasuke only gave her a cold stare, watching her in disinterest as she crossed her arms and nodded her head as she spoke, like she thought she knew everything. Well, he hasn't had a normal childhood. He doesn't have any parents. Sasuke stiffened at that, Sakura not noticing, moving her hands in a, what can you do? Motion like she thought she was better than Naruto. He can do whatever he wants. If I acted like him, my parents would get so mad at me. Sasuke glared daggers at her, but she still didn't notice. He's so lucky, all alone, parents never getting on his case. That's why he misbehaves so much. All alone, Sasuke muttered darkly. She asked stupidly, making Sasuke angrier at her. The sorrow of having a parent yell at you is nowhere near what he feels. Sakura became flustered at his cold attitude, not that he cared. What's this, all of a sudden? Sasuke only sent her another cold Uchiha glare, this one much more severe and laced with ki. You're annoying. Sasuke didn't even bother seeing her reaction as he walked away, back to the academy since Naruto probably went back by now. Sasuke was actually pretty proud of himself for not doing anything drastic like causing the little bitch bodily harm, especially after what she said about Naruto. Naruto was walking back to the academy, having decided that Sasuke had probably gone back by now, when he saw said Uchiha in the distance. He jogged to catch up to him before calling out a greeting. What are you doing here, Otuto? Sasuke only smirked at him. I could ask you the same question. Naruto only gulped guiltily and looked away. Oh, you know, eating my lunch, going to the bathroom, normal stuff. Naruto really didn't want Sasuke to know about his failed prank, especially because he had hinged into Sasuke for it. Naruto was sure that he'd laugh at the failure as soon as he was done being mad about it. Sasuke just gave him a look that said he was unconvinced before stuffing his hands in his pockets and looking ahead. Naruto looked back at Sasuke with a grin, prank forgotten. I thought I got you out of the habit of saying that. Sasuke only smirked. Naruto rolled his eyes. Naruto groaned against the desk. I can't believe this guy. Everyone else already left with their senseis. We've been here for hours. Sasuke and Hinata couldn't really attest to Naruto's complaining since it was true. Naruto suddenly straightened, raising his hands in exasperation, startling the other two in the room. That's it. If this guy doesn't come in the next few minutes, he said as he stood and set up a chalkboard eraser at the door, I'm going to make him my test subjects for all the pranks I've had lined up for when I had free time, he finished menacingly. Both Hinata and Sasuke shivered at that, knowing that the lame prank he was pulling now would only be a precursor to much worse things to their poor sensei in the future if he didn't show up soon. Hinata twiddled her fingers together as she tried to speak to her idol. Naruto K-kun, why you sure TT that AJ Jonin will fall for T that? Before Naruto could respond, the Jonin decided that it was finally time for him to make his appearance, the eraser perfectly landing on the Jonin's gravity-defying spiky hair and making the three genin stare at the masked, lazy-looking Jonin in shock, at least before Naruto burst out laughing. Ha ha ha, I can't believe you fell for that. Hinata was also amused, but was more worried about her idol getting in trouble because of his little prank. Naruto-kun, she managed to mumble. Sasuke, however, was not amused at all, his brows furrowing in consternation. This is our Jonin. He doesn't seem very reliable, at least he didn't glare at Naruto like everyone else. He must be one of the ones that are neutral towards him, Sasuke thought with some relief, having silently worried whether or not their new sensei would treat Naruto well. The Jonin put a fingerless gloved hand up to his masked chin, his head tilted up slightly and his one visible eye closed into an upside-down U shape, as if smiling with his eye. How can I say this? My first impression is, I don't like you guys, he deadpanned. The three genin sweat dropped at this. You think he's mad? Naruto stage whispered to Hinata, who fiddled with her jacket's zipper. I think he's mad. Hinata mumbled. Sasuke nodded sharply. He's totally mad. Sasuke agreed with the same stage whisper and brooding expression, and this time it was the Jonin's turn to sweat drop at the three, since they could clearly hear them, whispering, to each other. Hey look, his hair is still white, Naruto indiscreetly whispered to his teammates. Do you think he was too lazy to wash out the chalk? Sasuke murmured back. Maybe it's just naturally like that. Hinata whispered back. Sasuke scoffed. No way, he probably dyed it. Now it was Naruto's turn to add his input. Maybe he's actually just older than he looks. Oh, the other two replied as if they figured something out, once again making the Jonin sweat drop. Okay, let's begin with some introductions. The Jonin stated, his arms crossed as he leaned against the railing of the building. What do you want TT to know? Hinata asked timidly. Sasuke and Naruto shared a long-side glance after looking at Hinata, both thinking that they were going to need to fix that and soon. The Cyclops Jonin shrugged. How about likes, dislikes, dreams for the future, hobbies, stuff like that? Naruto leaned forward, resting his head against his hand, his arm supported by his knee. Hey, why don't you introduce yourself to us first? Sasuke nodded in agreement. It's only proper manners. Hinata followed up. Why you look rather suspicious. Her two teammates snickered and smirked at that, both sending her an approving glance. Maybe, it'll be easier to help her get out of shell than we thought. Both Naruto and Sasuke thought. Oh, me. My name is Kakashi Hatake. I have no desire to tell you guys my likes and dislikes. Dreams for the future. Well, I have a lot of hobbies. All three genin shared the same thought. All we learned was his name. Now it's your turn, from right to left, go. Naruto straightened, fingering his headband. I guess that's me. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. I like cup ramen, gardening, training, hanging out with Sasuke, and meditating. What I like even more is Ichiraku ramen, especially when Iruka-sensei or Sasuke are paying. What I dislike is waiting 3 minutes for the cup ramen to cook, rapists, traitors, and people who can't see things as they are. Kakashi was getting caught by surprise every time he finished a sentence. At first he started out like a ramen-loving idiot, but then he said one thing that makes the Jonin think otherwise. My dream is to be acknowledged by the village and surpass the Hokages. He stated proudly. Hobbies: pranking, gardening, cooking, hanging out with Sasuke, meditating, painting, and calligraphy. Kakashi gave up trying to figure out the blonde enigma, scratching his head and sighing. Next, Sasuke glanced at the Jonin coldly, his hands together and in front of his face. My name is Sasuke Uchiha. There are tons of things I dislike, especially fangirls. I like to train, Naruto's cooking, hanging out with Naruto, and I don't want to use the word dream, but I have ambition, to help Naruto achieve his goals, the resurrection of my clan, and to find a certain man. Kakashi's eyes widened at the first part of Sasuke's ambitions. The last bit I fully expected, but I didn't realize that Sasuke was so devoted to Naruto that seeing his dreams come true has become one of his ambitions. He crossed his arms in thought. And lastly, the girl. Hinata stared shyly down at her twittering fingers, embarrassed at having been put on the spot. My name is Hinata Hyuga. ILL like Zenzai *********, cinnamon rolls, F flowers, AA and M my idol. ID dislike sea crabs, S shrimp, bullies, and the Hyuga clan's C caste S system. My D dream is T to R raise my SS self C confidence, M make my FF father P proud, A and unite T the M main and B branch FF family and T the Hyuga clan. M my H hobbies are T to press F flowers A and T train. All three guys stared at the girl in awe. Her entire introduction had passive-aggressive jabs at the Hyuga clan in it, and it didn't even seem like she meant it to be mean, she was only telling the truth. Kakashi quickly got over his shock, or rather hid it, and I smiled at the girl. My, how very ambitious of you. He sighed and crossed his arms. Okay, that's enough of that, we will start our duties tomorrow. Sasuke's and Naruto's eyes sharpened at that. So it's tomorrow. Good, then we have some time to prepare. Naruto grinned. Yay. Duties. He saluted Kakashi. What kind of duties? Duties. First we are going to do something with just the four of us. What? Dear Kami, I can't wait until tomorrow's test is over. I can't keep acting excited all the time. Survival training, the Jonin stated lazily. Survival training, Naruto parroted. WWY is T training ORDD duty? Hinata asked timidly. I'm your opponent, but this isn't normal training. Then, what is it? Naruto was getting irritated at the Jonin for dragging this on, only to get more irritated when the Cyclops actually started chuckling. What's S so FF funny, S sensei? Kakashi only smiled and flippantly waved a hand at them. No. It's just that, when I tell you this, you guys are gonna flip. Naruto raised a brow at him. Ha, flip. The white-haired Cyclops then leaned forward dramatically. Of the 27 graduates, only 9 will be chosen as genin. The rest will be sent back to academy. This training is a super difficult exam with a failure rate of over 66%. Sasuke's sweat dropped, Hinata paled, and Naruto put on an exaggerated face of shock and horror. Haha, I told you you'd flip. What the hell, but we worked so hard, then what was the point of graduating? Naruto protested vehemently. Oh, that's just to select those that have the chance to become genin, Kakashi stated casually. What? Kakashi ignored Naruto's outraged cry. Anyways, tomorrow you will be graded on training ground. Bring all your shinobi tools. Oh, and skip breakfast or else you'll throw up. He took out 3 sheets from somewhere in his vest and walked over to them. The details can be read on this printout. Don't be late tomorrow. As soon as we grabbed the papers, Kakashi shunted away in a puff of smoke. As soon as he was gone, both Sasuke and Naruto gave equal Cheshire cat grins. Hey, Sasuke. Yeah, Naruto. He waved around the sheet in the air. Looks like we have the time and the place. Sasuke smirked. Now all that's left is the planning. Naruto turned to look at a confused Hinata. Hinata, wanna help us strategize for the test tomorrow? The blue-haired girl blushed and looked down, twiddling her fingers. Oh okay. Naruto only gave a wide grin. Cyclops sensei won't know what hit him.